They said justice was blind, but she could see everything. In a courtroom built on bias, a young black lawyer faced a system determined to silence her. What happened next didn't just change one verdict, it exposed an entire empire built on injustice. Stay to the end. You'll never forget her name. Atlanta smelled like rain and ambition that morning, the kind that doesn't wash things clean, only reveals what's been buried. Aaliyah Monroe, 29 years old, sat in her rusted Toyota, staring at the courthouse steps. Her hands gripped the steering wheel the same way her mother used to clutch prayer beads, with faith and fear tangled together. Inside that courthouse, she'd argue for a boy she barely knew. But in a way, she'd been preparing for this moment her whole life. She looked down at her cracked phone. The wallpaper still showed a photo of her mother, Ruth Monroe, smiling in her nurse's scrubs, exhaustion hiding behind grace. Ruth used to tell her, "Baby, this world will try to make you small. Your job is to make the truth louder." That voice echoed in her head every morning. Especially today. Aaliyah's childhood was not gentle. She grew up on the South Side, where sirens were lullabies and ambition was considered arrogance. Her mother raised her alone after her father was killed in a traffic stop gone wrong, an unarmed black man, matching the description. She was 12 when she saw her mother break for the first time, screaming into a towel so the neighbors wouldn't hear. That was the day Aaliyah promised herself. She wouldn't cry. She'd fight. Through scholarships, night shifts, and ramen noodles, she clawed her way to Howard Law School. Top of her class, sharp mind, sharper conscience. Her professors told her to chase corporate firms. Big paychecks. Prestige. She shook her head. Justice isn't a luxury brand, she said. And so, instead of high-rises, she chose Fulton County Public Defense, where hope came with a court date and justice was always late. Her boss, Eleanor Graves, a veteran lawyer with graying dreadlocks, once warned her, "You sure you ready for this, baby girl? These courtrooms weren't built for us. They were built to contain us." Aaliyah smiled. Then it's time to redecorate. That Tuesday morning, she walked through the courthouse metal detector, the same one that beeped extra loud for her every single time. The guard smiled apologetically, but didn't stop it. Her heels clicked on the marble floor as she whispered to herself. Head high, heart steady. Truth first, fear last. She stopped outside courtroom 4B, State versus Marcus Boyd. I am 17 years old. Charged with armed robbery. Facing 20 years in prison. Aaliyah had seen the file. It was paper-thin, but every word was loaded with bias. No prints. No DNA. No motive. Just a name and a face that fit the description. When she entered the holding area, Marcus sat on a metal bench, hoodie pulled tight, eyes heavy with exhaustion. "Marcus," she said softly. "I'm Aaliyah. I'm your attorney." He looked up, uncertain. "They said you're one of the good ones." She smiled. "That's what they say when they don't expect us to win." Marcus was quiet for a while. Then he said, "I didn't do it, Miss Monroe. I was at work that night. The store cameras." "I know," she said, cutting in gently. "We're going to find that footage." "They told me the cameras were broken," he whispered. "Then we'll find the truth somewhere else." And in that moment, for the first time in months, the boy's shoulders relaxed just a little. Across the hall, District Attorney Richard Calloway adjusted his tie. At 60, he was a man who'd mastered the art of charm and cruelty in equal measure. His handshake was warm, his eyes cold. He'd built a reputation as a law and order DA, tough on crime, even tougher on color. He didn't hate people like Aaliyah. He simply didn't see them. To him, she was a distraction, a young lawyer who'd learned soon enough that truth didn't matter when power was in the room. When they met outside the courtroom, he gave her a tight smile. "Ms. Monroe," he said, voice dripping in practiced politeness. "I've heard of you. Howard grad, right? Impressive resume. Shame to waste it on this." "This?" she asked. "Public defense," he said, gesturing dismissively. You could have gone corporate. Instead, you're defending thugs. Aaliyah's smile never faltered. I defend people, she said. You just prosecute headlines. He chuckled. Spirited. That'll fade. Not before your temper does, she replied. Calloway smirked, but his jaw tightened. The game had begun. In courtrooms like these, it's never just law versus law. It's system versus soul. And sometimes, the soul fights back. It will dive into Marcus's background, the DA's manipulation, and Aaliyah's first major humiliation in court, where she begins uncovering the corruption that sets the rest of the story in motion. The courtroom looked like a cathedral for control. High ceilings, polished benches, a flag raised like a promise everyone knew was broken. Aaliyah took her seat at the defense table, Marcus beside her, wrists still chained. She leaned close. Remember, you're more than what they see in those chains. Keep your head up. Always. He nodded, but his eyes darted toward the gallery. His mother, Denise Boyd, sat in the second row, twisting a church handkerchief into knots. She mouthed, I love you. That was enough for him to breathe. When the bailiff called, All rise, Judge Harold Jennings entered, a man who'd been on the bench longer than Aaliyah had been alive. His robe was black, but everyone in the courthouse knew his opinions weren't. Jennings glanced at Aaliyah, then at Calloway. Counselor, are you ready to proceed? Always, Your Honor, Calloway said, voice rich with performance. Defense. Aaliyah rose. Ready. Her voice carried steadiness she didn't yet feel. Calloway began his opening like a sermon for the fearful. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he said, pacing smoothly. The evidence will show that Marcus Boyd, a young man who fell into the wrong crowd, entered Milton's market with a firearm and demanded cash. He threatened a store clerk's life for a few $100s. He turned, pausing dramatically on the word life. Now, we all want to believe in second chances. But we cannot excuse violence. The jurors nodded. He was good, too good. Every pause, every smile, every word calibrated to trigger fear. Aaliyah watched, taking notes. Appeals to emotion, not evidence. Strategy. Paint the stereotype. When it was her turn, she stood, heart steady. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, you've just heard a story crafted to make you feel something before you've even seen the facts. But the facts will tell you this. Marcus Boyd didn't commit that robbery. He couldn't have. He was at work that night, earning a paycheck, not stealing one. She walked to the jury rail. And if justice truly means truth, then we'll show you exactly that. The prosecution's first witness was the arresting officer, Sergeant Blake, a man with the bulk of a linebacker and the memory of convenience. Sergeant, Calloway said, tell the jury how you identified the suspect. Based on the witness description, young black male, dark hoodie, 6 feet. Aaliyah rose. Your Honor, that describes half the teenage boys in the county. Calloway smirked. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained, the judge said, glaring at her. She sat down slowly, reminding herself not to let anger speak first. But as Blake continued, he slipped. He admitted they'd arrested Marcus just 10 minutes after the robbery, 10 minutes away from the store, because he looked nervous. Aaliyah's pen froze. Nervous. That single word could justify anything. When her turn came for cross-examination, she stood tall. Sergeant, how many suspects did you question before arresting Marcus? 1. Did you review any surveillance footage from the store? It was unavailable. Unavailable, or inconvenient. He hesitated. The gallery murmured. Strike that. Calloway barked. Judge Jennings nodded. Jury will disregard. But Aaliyah saw the flicker in the jurors' eyes. They hadn't disregarded anything. In the hallway, reporters swarmed Calloway. He smiled for the cameras. Justice is on our side, he said. When they turned to Aaliyah, she simply said, truth doesn't need good lighting. Still, she felt the weight pressing down. Her case notes were clear. The DA was hiding something. The missing video, the rushed arrest, it all smelled of setup. She walked out of the courthouse for air. Across the street stood a small soul food diner. Inside, the owner, Miss Thelma, waved her in. "Baby, you look like you've been fightin' ghosts," Thelma said, pouring sweet tea. "Just people pretending to be them," Aaliyah replied. Thelma chuckled. "Don't forget, honey, ghosts can't stand the truth. Keep throwing it at 'em." That evening, Aaliyah visited Marcus's neighborhood, Decatur's West End. The smell of fried okra and exhaust filled the air. She needed to understand him, not just defend him. His mother answered the door, eyes red. "Miss Monroe, I told him to stay away from those boys. But he was just working, just trying to help me pay rent." She pointed to a corner-framed photo, Marcus at his part-time job in a laundromat uniform. "Can I talk to your boss?" Aaliyah asked. "He's gone nights mostly. Check the 24-hour laundromat down on Peachtree." At the laundromat, the owner, a middle-aged Latino man named Raul Ortega, frowned. "Marcus. Good kid. He was here that night. Cameras caught everything. But the cops came the next day, took the hard drive. Said it was evidence. Never brought it back." Aaliyah's pulse quickened. "Do you have backups?" Raul shook his head. "Old system. Only one drive." Her jaw tightened. "They took your only copy?" He nodded. "I told them the timestamps didn't match the robbery window. They said not to worry about it." That night, Aaliyah sat at her kitchen table surrounded by files, cold Chinese takeout untouched. The city lights flickered through blinds like flashing sirens. She whispered, "They buried it." She grabbed her phone, calling an old friend, Zoe Kim, an IT specialist she'd gone to law school with. "Zoe, I need help resurrecting deleted footage from a police-confiscated drive." "Illegal," Zoe said. "So was the arrest." A pause. "Text me the address." The next morning, court resumed. Aaliyah walked in to find Calloway already in full showman mode. He displayed a photo of Marcus in his hoodie, holding a cell phone. This was taken hours before the robbery. "Look familiar." A juror gasped. Aaliyah stood. "Objection. No proof this image is related to the incident." Calloway smiled. "Withdrawn. Just context." But the damage was done. Later, when she tried introducing Marcus's work schedule as alibi evidence, the judge cut her off. "We're not here to rewrite time cards, Ms. Monroe." The jury chuckled. She felt heat crawl up her neck but kept her tone even. "Understood, Your Honor." When she sat down, Marcus whispered, "They hate me." "No," she said quietly. "They fear what you prove." That night, Zoe texted, "Got something. Call me." Aaliyah raced to Zoe's apartment. On her screen flickered grainy footage, time-stamped 20 minutes after Marcus's arrest. A tall man, same build, same hoodie, sprinted out of Milton's Market with a gun in hand. "Holy, Zoe, can you clean this up?" Already rendering a clear frame. Aaliyah exhaled for the first time in days. "You just gave a kid his future back." Zoe smiled. "Then let's make sure the world sees it." The next morning, she filed a motion to introduce new evidence. Calloway's office tried to block it, calling it inadmissible. But Judge Jennings, under media eyes, had no choice but to allow a preliminary review. Still, Calloway wasn't finished. That afternoon, he cornered her outside the elevators. "You're poking holes in a system that feeds us both, Ms. Monroe," he said. "Then maybe it's time it starved." He leaned close, whispering, "Careful. Idealists make great martyrs." She met his gaze. "Then I'll die telling the truth." Every revolution begins with a whisper that refuses to stay small. And sometimes, that whisper carries the weight of generations. The courtroom was packed the next morning. Reporters, activists, even students from the local law school. Everyone wanted to see the woman who dared to challenge Richard Calloway. Aaliyah felt the stares burn into her as she took her seat. She whispered to Marcus, "They're not here to watch you lose. They're here to see what courage looks like." He nodded, gripping the table so tightly his knuckles whitened. Across the aisle, Calloway smirked, the kind of smirk that made people want to slap history itself. He leaned toward his assistant and whispered something that made them both chuckle. Aaliyah didn't have to hear it to know the tone. Condescension disguised as charm. "Your Honor," Calloway began, "before the defense presents any so-called new evidence, the state would like to question the credibility of its source." Judge Jennings nodded. "Proceed." Calloway turned to Aaliyah, feigning politeness. "Ms. Monroe, you claim this footage exonerates your client. Care to explain how it appeared conveniently after the trial began?" Aaliyah rose. "Because the police confiscated it and failed to disclose it to the defense. An intentional violation of Brady v. Maryland." A ripple moved through the courtroom. Calloway's eyes darkened. "Serious accusation, counselor." "Serious crime," she replied. He stepped closer to the bench. "Your Honor, this is reckless. The defense is implying misconduct without proof." Aaliyah raised a folder. "Then let's make it proof." Inside were signed statements from Raul Ortega, the laundromat owner, and Zoe Kim's digital report verifying the chain of custody. Jennings flipped through the documents, frowning. "These are substantial." For the first time, Calloway's mask slipped. At lunch, Calloway stormed into his office. His assistant followed, nervous. "Sir, if this footage holds up, it could." "Shut up," Calloway snapped. "We control the narrative." He poured himself whiskey from a cabinet that probably held more secrets than files. He stared at his reflection in the glass. For decades, he'd crafted an image, a savior of justice. But now, one young black woman was threatening to undo it all. "She doesn't know who she's dealing with," he muttered. "She thinks this is about a boy. It's about power." Back in the courthouse cafeteria, Aaliyah sat alone with a cup of coffee gone cold. Her mentor, Eleanor Graves, slid into the seat across from her. "He's rattled," Eleanor said. "That's good." "He's dangerous," Aaliyah replied. Eleanor nodded slowly. "The closer you get to the truth, the dirtier they fight." "Don't blink." Aaliyah sighed. "I'm not sure the judge is on my side." "Doesn't matter," Eleanor said. "You don't need his favor. You need his fear." Those words hit like caffeine to the soul. When court resumed, Calloway played his last trick. "Your Honor," he said, "the state moves to disqualify Ms. Monroe from representing the defendant due to potential tampering with evidence." The room gasped. Aaliyah stood. "That's a lie." "Order," Jennings bellowed. "Mr. Calloway, are you serious?" "Absolutely," he said. "We have a sworn statement from a technician claiming she accessed restricted evidence servers." It was fabricated, of course, but believable. Aaliyah felt heat rise in her chest. "Your Honor, this is retaliation. The state is terrified of losing." Jennings looked torn. The gallery murmured. Finally, he sighed. "Motion denied, for now. But Ms. Monroe, tread carefully." Calloway's smile returned. The poison had worked. Doubt now hung in the air like smoke. Aaliyah sat down, trembling. Marcus whispered, "You okay?" She forced a small smile. "They only attack when they're scared." That night, Aaliyah worked late in her office. Empty pizza boxes covered her desk. Rain hammered the windows. She stared at the evidence footage, replaying every second. Something about the suspect's movement felt familiar. The way he ran, the slight limp in his left leg. She scrubbed through the frame again, zooming in. There, on his wrist, something glinted. A police badge chain. Her stomach dropped. No way. She froze the frame, enhanced it. The image was blurry but undeniable. The person in the footage wasn't just a robber, it was an off-duty cop. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated and answered. A distorted male voice. "Stop digging, Ms. Monroe." Click. Her heart raced. She immediately called Zoe. "Can you trace this?" "Already trying," Zoe said. "Looks like a burner routed through the precinct network." Aaliyah's hands shook. "They're protecting one of their own." Zoe sighed. "Then you better be ready. You just hit the nerve." The next morning, her tires were slashed. A note under her windshield read, "Drop the case. Last warning." She snapped a photo, then went to work anyway. When she walked into the courthouse, whispers followed her. Reporters knew something was brewing. Eleanor caught her in the hallway. "They're trying to scare you." "They'll have to do better than tires," Aaliyah said. Inside the courtroom, Calloway was already waiting, pretending to scroll his phone. "You don't look well," he said. "Maybe it's the smell of desperation," she shot back. He leaned closer. "You really think this system will protect you when it turns?" "I don't need protection," she said. "I need proof." He laughed softly. "Proof is what men like me decide it is." "Then maybe it's time someone else made the decisions," she replied. Aaliyah called Raul Ortega as her next witness. "Mr. Ortega," she said, "did the police retrieve your store's hard drive?" "Yes, ma'am. Said it was for evidence." "Did they ever return it?" "No." "Did anyone from the DA's office contact you afterward?" Raul frowned. "One man did. Officer Miller. He said to forget about it." The courtroom went silent. Aaliyah's pulse pounded. "Officer Miller. Is he present today?" She turned to the gallery. A uniformed man sat in the back, stone-faced. "Please note for the record," she said, "that Officer Miller is here." Calloway jumped up. "Irrelevant." "Overruled," Judge Jennings said quietly, his tone changing. Something had shifted. For the first time, the judge wasn't shielding Calloway. After the witness stepped down, Aaliyah played the footage again, slowing it down frame by frame. She pointed at the glint on the suspect's wrist. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, voice trembling but fierce, "the real robber wasn't a teenager trying to survive. It was a man sworn to protect this city. The same man who helped bury this evidence." The jurors' faces changed, from skepticism to shock to rage. Calloway's knuckles whitened around his pen. Aaliyah locked eyes with him. This is what happens when power forgets its purpose. As the judge adjourned for the day, Calloway stormed out the side door. Reporters followed. "Mr. Calloway, are the allegations true? Did your office suppress evidence?" He barked, "No comment," and vanished into his car. Inside her office, Aaliyah finally let her hands shake. She looked at the photo of her mother again. "You told me the truth would cost something," she whispered. "I didn't know it'd be everything." Her phone buzzed. Text from Zoe, trace complete. The threatening call came from Calloway's assistant's office. Aaliyah froze. Proof of intimidation. Proof of corruption. It was enough. Power protects itself until it can't. And when truth walks in, even the walls start to whisper. The morning of the verdict felt too calm, the kind of quiet that comes right before thunder. Outside, protesters crowded the courthouse steps, signs reading "Justice for Marcus" and "Truth has a voice." Reporters lined the sidewalks, microphones raised like weapons. Inside, Aaliyah adjusted her blazer and whispered, "We finish this today." Marcus nodded, eyes rimmed red but determined. When Judge Jennings entered, even the air seemed to hold its breath. "Counsel, closing statements." Calloway rose first. His once slick composure had cracked. Sweat gathered at his temples. His voice wavered between arrogance and desperation. "Ladies and gentlemen, the defense wants you to believe in conspiracy theories. Do not let theatrics distract you from facts. The evidence." Aaliyah stood before he could finish. "Objection. Mischaracterization." Sustained, the judge said sharply. The DA blinked, stunned. The authority he'd worn like a crown all his career was slipping through his fingers. He stumbled through the rest of his argument, leaning on old fear tactics that suddenly sounded hollow. Then Aaliyah walked to the center of the courtroom. The lights above hummed, and every camera tilted toward her. "Your Honor, members of the jury," she began softly, "we all walked into this room believing justice was blind. But what if blindness isn't virtue? What if it's convenience?" She paused, letting the silence lean in. When a black boy's freedom depends on which way a camera points, that isn't justice. That's luck. And luck should never decide who gets to live free. She turned toward Marcus. This young man lost 2 months of his life because someone powerful decided the truth was optional. But truth doesn't vanish. It waits. It waited in a hard drive. It waited in a laundromat. It waited in all of us. Her voice rose. Today, you have a chance to say that truth matters again. Even the judge looked moved. Hours passed in the jury room. Every tick of the clock felt like a heartbeat. Marcus sat trembling. Aaliyah clasped his hands. The bailiff finally announced, "Jury returning." The foreman stood, face unreadable. "We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty." The words hit like light through stained glass. Denise Boyd collapsed into tears. Reporters erupted. Marcus sobbed openly. Aaliyah exhaled, half relief, half disbelief. She squeezed Marcus's shoulder. "You're free." Across the room, Calloway stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, a man watching his empire crumble in real time. By nightfall, the story had exploded. Hashtags trended. Hashtag Monroe for justice. Hashtag the verdict they never saw coming. Footage of the trial flooded social media. Clips of Aaliyah's closing words, her calm defiance, her discovery of the badge chain. The video hit 1 million views in under an hour. Whistleblowers from the DA's office began leaking files. Dozens of cases were suddenly under review. Cases that had sent black men to prison under Calloway's zero-tolerance policy. Within days, the governor announced an independent investigation. Within weeks, Richard Calloway resigned. His statement read, "Personal reasons." Everyone knew the truth. His reign of fear was over. But Aaliyah's fight didn't end with one verdict. A month later, she stood on the steps of the same courthouse, this time behind a podium. Cameras flashed. Marcus and his mother stood beside her. Behind them, hundreds gathered, students, lawyers, janitors, nurses, people who'd felt invisible their whole lives. Aaliyah adjusted the mic. "When I walked into that courtroom, I thought I was fighting for one boy. I didn't know I was fighting for all of us." Applause thundered. "The system isn't broken," she said. "It was built this way. But every person who speaks truth is a crack in that foundation. One day, those cracks will bring the whole wall down." Reporters scribbled frantically, but Aaliyah wasn't speaking to them. She was speaking to every little girl watching from a small apartment, wondering if her voice mattered. She smiled faintly. "It does." 1 year later, a new sign hung above the entrance of a renovated office downtown. The Monroe Center for Justice. Inside, Aaliyah walked past interns answering phones, community volunteers filing expungement petitions, and children drawing on whiteboards while their parents met with lawyers. Marcus worked there now, college student, advocate, mentor to kids from his neighborhood. He grinned as Aaliyah entered. "They're waiting for you in the conference room, Ms. Monroe." She smiled back. "I still can't get used to that title." "You earned it." In the conference room, representatives from major law firms and activists sat together. Former rivals turned allies. Aaliyah clicked a remote. The first slide read, "Project Blindfold." "We're launching a national initiative," she said. "Bodycam transparency, evidence preservation, and accountability in every county. We're done letting the truth depend on luck." A round of applause erupted. Eleanor Graves leaned close and whispered, "Your mama would be proud." Aaliyah blinked away tears. I hope so. Across town, Richard Calloway sat alone in his study. The television replayed Aaliyah's press conference on every channel. He turned the volume up just enough to hear her say, "Justice doesn't belong to the powerful, it belongs to the persistent." He poured another drink, staring at the framed awards on his wall. Then he reached up, took one down, and let it fall to the floor. The glass shattered. For the first time, he saw himself clearly, not as the man who upheld the law, but as the reason it needed defending. Weeks later, Aaliyah received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single line typed on a plain sheet of paper. "You were right. R.C." She folded it once, placed it in her drawer beside her mother's photo, and whispered, "Justice doesn't need apologies. It needs change." At the next citywide graduation ceremony, Aaliyah was invited as keynote speaker. She stepped onto the stage wearing the same navy suit she'd worn the day she freed Marcus. Thousands of faces looked up at her. Young, hopeful, diverse. "Last year," she began, "I watched a system try to silence me. It failed. Not because I was fearless, but because I was tired of being afraid." She walked slowly across the stage. Justice isn't a destination. It's a daily decision. And if the people in charge won't make it, then it's up to us. The crowd roared. She raised her voice one last time. "Never forget, truth doesn't whisper. It waits. And when it finally speaks, it sounds like you." The audience stood, cheering, chanting her name. They said justice was blind. But maybe, just maybe, it's finally starting to see. Because of one woman who refused to bow, a movement was born. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. Out of the simple, radical belief that dignity isn't negotiable. Her name was Aaliyah Monroe. And her story reminds us that the law doesn't shape justice. People do. The verdict they never saw coming became the future they couldn't stop. If Aaliyah's story inspired you, don't let it stop here. Click like, share, and comment your thoughts below. Every view helps more voices be heard. Every share spreads the truth further. We're building a community that believes justice belongs to everyone. Subscribe and help us reach 5,000 subscribers. Because silence protects power. But your voice builds change.